Great, man. How are you?
I'm doing really well, man. Really well.
I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So, our podcast is all about your journey in the music industry and really how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Where do I start? Yeah.
Tell me about where you grew up.
I'm born and raised here in Seattle, man. I still live here in
Oh,
Seattle.
right on.
Yeah, so born and raised right here. I got started, I guess, in music when I was probably young. I grew up with
Hmm.
my auntie because I don't know if you've read a little bit of the backstory, but my both my parents were kind of dealing with addiction and living a bit of the street life at the time. So I was raised with my
Hmm.
auntie, and my mom's side of the family comes from like Oklahoma, Kansas City area,
Hmm.
Wichita mainly, and so because of that, I went to church every Sunday, which is always like this kind of gospel themed Baptist church. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of my first start in music was at the church. And as I got older, I would as I got older, I would um, I would go on to learn how to play some instruments and things. Got into playing piano, taught myself how to play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got into violin at age 11, and then at 13, I learned how to taught myself how to play guitar.
Oh, my gosh.
And all the while growing up in gospel church, so I'm learning all this blues and gospel and kind of the structure
Hmm.
behind soul music. Then by the time I was at 18 years old, 19 years old, I started playing coffee shops and cafes and doing open mics.
Okay.
And then I from there, after since I turned 21, I started playing at a bunch of bars and restaurants here in Seattle,
Hmm.
and started my own band. So which was mainly blues themed, just kind of getting in the scene was mainly blues themed. But as I got older and namely an experience in where I got a chance to tour alongside Janelle Monáe and Fun at the time.
Oh,
It was like
wow.
it was only for like a week, man, and but I got a phone call from a friend of mine, Austin Hendrix, who was working on her project at the time and said she was going on tour and they needed a guitar player for a punk group that was going on tour with them under her label Wonderland called Deep Cotton. So I kind of got my first real big start playing with Deep Cotton in like
Mhm.
2011. And after watching how they all did it, Janelle and all the groups and all the artists and her label were doing it, I was just like, that's what I want to do. So I started focusing my intentions on becoming like an actual artist as opposed to just being a musician who played around town.
Hmm.
So that's when I started. That's when I came home and really started focusing on my sound. And you know, um, one day I got discovered by Sir Mix-a-Lot. Like the following year was like 2012, and I was playing in a bar.
Whoa.
Sir Mix-a-Lot walks in, and he's in love with what he hears, and he's like, I want to produce your first record. So my first independent record was produced by Sir Mix-a-Lot and released
Oh,
here
my
locally.
God.
Yeah, and released here locally, and it made a big splash. I mean, we made, Mix-a-Lot's huge here in the Northwest, and he's huge, period. But
Sure.
he's adored here in the Northwest, and so when the news got wind that we were working on a project together, it kind of blew up here in Seattle.
Hmm.
And so that was my first little start, and that got me the opportunity to open for so a lot bigger, some other bigger acts. I went on to open for BB King shortly after that.
Jeez.
Got to do some stuff with Robin Trower. I've opened for Jeff Beck now.
Wow.
And then as my and also just being in the hip hop vein because my music has always been kind of hip hop centric as well.
Hmm.
So being in the hip hop vein, I also had the opportunity to open for like Run DMC or play alongside Run DMC, Public Enemy, and Rakim and all that. And then, but
Whoa.
as I'm figuring out my sound, of course, I'm influenced by grunge music growing up here in Seattle, and so I'm increasingly finding more and more ways to represent that in my music. And as I'm doing that, I'm kind of finding little avenues to go through in which to help that sound come about. And so, while my first record was getting the notoriety it was here in Northwest, I got the attention of Barrett Martin, who was the drummer for Screaming Trees,
Oh
and
wow.
and Mad Seasons.
Uh-huh.
And he kind of was had a direct role in trying to in helping me come along as a songwriter as well,
Hmm.
because he's actually an excellent songwriter, and because he's a drummer, he understood arrangements,
Sure.
and so bringing him in was a big deal. So he ended up producing my second indie record, and then and that kind of opened doors for me to go on and do even more. And at the time, as my name's growing regionally here, it starts to get seep into like the mainstream underbelly. You
Hmm.
could say it was definitely underground, but there was pockets of the U.S. that were starting to kind of, you could see my name popping up. And um so as that's going on, I started opening for more rock centric acts. We got a chance to jump on stage alongside here in the Northwest. We got a chance to play with Living Color. uh
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
I got a chance to open for Guns N' Roses here at the Gorge.
What? That must
They
have
gave
been.
us
Tell me
it
about
was
that. That must have been insane.
Oh, it was insane, man. We had just dropped that second indie record, and Guns N' Roses was actually filling in for they were filling for Dave Matthews, who usually does, I think it's Labor Day concert down there. And so I just signed a contract with Indigoot Management, and they were like, they worked hard to give me this opening slot alongside having worked with Barrett. Barrett's really close with Duff, and so we got a chance to open for Guns N' Roses and played alongside. That day was the direct support was who was that? Royal Blood.
Jeez. Oh yeah,
Um,
I remember that tour. Okay.
yeah. So we got a chance to open for those guys too.
I love that
But
band.
my sound just kind of developed more into like it was obvious I was definitely finding my sound, and then the next key that I was really missing was just finding out how to be the kind of lyricist I wanted to be, and making sure that my lyrics hit and formulaically we're getting to the ears that I was wanting to get it to. So it took a lot of work. I mean, on the latter end of that, of to where we're at now, to figure out kind of what I wanted to talk about and sound like, and all that. But
Hmm.
I worked hard on that for the next few years, and I had finally discovered my sound, and that's when I got in the studio and started laying down these tracks for this new record that eventually wound up in the hands of Big Machine and John Varvatos Records. Uh,
Yeah.
and so then they flew out and they loved what they heard, and now we're here. And the new single's out, and it's amazing. So
Very cool, man. That's so cool. So I want to go all the way back to the beginning when you said you were in well, were you in like the gospel choir at church? Was that the first like experience you had in music?
yeah, so the gospel
Okay.
choir I'd say is definitely the first experience I had. That was the first really
Okay.
in yeah, doing gospel.
And then you said you picked up piano and violin and guitar. Um,
Yeah.
when did you start like writing your own songs and like performing? Were you like in high school? Did you start like a band, or do you remember your first kind of collective?
Collective, yeah. I kind of played some band projects in high school, but I didn't really have like a band or anything, and like, I mean, all the people that I went to high school with will remember me as the kid who dropped out of high school because all he did was play guitar in school. So that
Yeah.
was kind of my experience in high school. It was like, I like a lot of kids probably suffer from ADD that I've never really had looked at or scanned, but I can tell you right now, it's like it can be really hard for me to focus on one thing at a time.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I have the same problem, man.
yeah, so when that and for some kids when that goes unchecked, they kind of fall through the cracks in a sense. So I think that kind of was my experience in high school, where it's like I was into it, but it wasn't. What I'm trying to say, like I was so distracted and really into like shiny things like guitar and girls and TV. So yeah. Anyways, but my experience in middle school and in high school was I was always into performance art. So my first little bit of performing that I had was really in middle school.
Hmm.
And I was when I was in the orchestra, and that was actually when I started first attempting to write my first music and songs. And then when I got to high school and started getting better at guitar, I started writing music, kind of singer songwriter style, just as an individual guitar, as an individual, and that's kind of what I thought I wanted to do for the longest time, because that's what you do when you have an acoustic guitar. You sing about your heart and breaking and stuff and soul.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
So that's what I was really into. But I've been writing music pretty much my whole life. I mean, as far back as I can remember, man, it was poetry or music.
Hmm.
And then it was hard trying to get. The difficulty for me was translating that into to where I'm at now.
What do you when you say that? What do you mean, like translating just the singer songwriter acoustic stuff to what you're doing now?
Kind of that, yeah, exactly. It's like, because when you learn in that way, it's like you're trying to tell this whole story, and so you can
Hmm.
take a lot of lyrics and put them in this like phrase here that lasts almost forever, because it's like folk music. You can sing. It's there's a like the structure, I think, would be like AABA songwriting form. Like that song Brown Eyed Girl.
Yeah.
Where there's not really a chorus. There's just this part that keeps coming back over and over again.
Sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would I
Yeah.
would consider that like a very folk style of writing music. So like,
Hmm.
kind of learning that form of songwriting, and then trying to get into commercial rock, has been kind of a bit of it took some time for me to figure that out.
Yeah. What was the first performance you did of your own songs? You said you're writing and just being, a singer-songwriter by yourself with an acoustic guitar. Did you ever go out and play those songs in coffee shops, open mics, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's all I did. 19 years old, that's all I did. Oh, coffee shops, open mics. Even in high school, it's open mics all the time. And like, my school was very artsy, man. I went to Roosevelt High School here in Seattle, and it was a very art centric school.
Uh-huh.
And so I ended up um, what I ended up doing was working with the orchestra, and I did drama class, and I did all these different programs. But through that, I also was writing all this music. So my first performances were at these open mics in these coffee shops in high school, man. And then by the time I was 17, I had written out a whole orchestral piece. Like, I wrote it, and played guitar to it. By the time that was for my senior project.
Whoa.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I mean, I can pretty much go as far back as that to say that's what I've been doing. And my mind's always worked at composer style. Like, I'm in the bio, I don't know if it mentions this, but we talk about how I'm also influenced by classical forms of music, namely in the era of Mozart.
Uh-huh.
And like Beethoven. Just like really dark, heavy stuff. And so, but through that, I was able to kind of formulate and make my own music, and write out a chamber orchestra piece for a song that I wrote.
So you're writing music, you're playing the coffee shops. You said when you turned 21 or so, you got into the bar scene, playing the bars
Yeah.
and stuff. Like what did you get a manager first? Like, what was the next level up for you? Like, from going from the bars, like, then what happened?
Oh man, so going from the bars, it was getting a manager. That's right. That was the next step for me. Which for I mean, I gotta tell you, for independent artists, that's probably the hardest part. Is finding someone to help you move forward. Because you don't even know how to think big enough to find the right person yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, you
yeah.
you don't know how to think. Like, in your brain, you think that the goal is to find the guy that's going to get you like to the 300 person capacity stage in your home city.
Uh-huh.
Which is cool, but that doesn't really cover all the bases. Like, you're not even
Right.
thinking like, if I want to be an international artist, I should be thinking about finding someone who is internationally in the game.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas like if when you're an independent artist, it's like you're thinking, I want to be an international artist, but I'm going to settle for this guy who's going to get me, a slightly bigger venue around the corner, or like
Sure. Yeah. You're gonna get
the state below us.
the manager that's very good at booking events within your own town isn't gonna do any justice if you want to
Right.
become
It,
big.
it helps, right? But if you want to get
Yeah.
big, you got to. So yeah. So the next step for me was finding a manager, which was a process, man, and that was a long process.
How did you eventually end on or decide on the manager that you chose?
Um, it was. my career had just reached this point, man. I had man, I had done all these things for in my independent career that was, I would say, really really hard for an artist to do as an independent artist, to get on the stages I'd done and all these things. But I'd reached this point where I was just kind of feeling like I couldn't break through the ceiling, and so I had to make the hard decision to let go of a manager who I'd gotten pretty close with over the years, because I knew he wasn't gonna do it for me. And that's when I reached out to my agent at the time, and I just was like, look, man, like if you can find me somebody that can get me to this next level, I'd be really grateful. And so they called up Bill McGathy over at Indigoot, and we set something up, and that's when I knew, because we walked into their office in New York, and I mean they represented some of the greatest commercial rock bands in the last 20, 30 years, man. Like
Yeah.
Bill's been in the game for a long time, man. And so it was a no brainer for me. So that's when that happened, and then it just took the music to catch up after that.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you got the manager, you got Indigo supporting you or co-signing on your stuff, and then is that how you got like the fun tour, and then the like how are you getting tours and getting to play on these different stages?
Well, that was actually before a managers came into the
Oh,
picture at all.
wow.
Yeah, so this is before a
Okay.
manager came into the picture in that way, and this is what I mean. So there's a little bit of divide there. Yeah, so there's this is before any manager came in. I was already doing, I got on the Fun tour. I'd opened for Robert Cray. I'd done some pretty cool stuff already.
Yeah. How did you? Well, tell me about that fun tour. How did you get that as just an independent artist?
Oh yeah, my buddy Austin Hendrix gave me a call. I used to play at his dad's venue over here. So his dad, Austin's dad, and his well, first of all, Austin's mom is Janie Hendrix. So Janie Hendrix is like the head of the Hendrix Foundation. You gotta remember, this is Seattle, man. So we're all, I mean, I know to everybody else it looks like a big city, but like we're all right here, and especially in the Black community, we're really, all of us are really, really, we're right here. We're
tight knit, yeah.
It's all really tight knit, man. So
I love
anyways,
that.
Austin's dad owned a venue down in Lower Queen Anne here in Seattle, and a spot that was he owned alongside Sean Kemp, who used to play for the Sonics.
Yeah, I love Sean Kemp. He's one of my favorite players.
Yeah, dude. Sean Kemp and Austin's dad Troy owned a Scott or Bistro together, and I used to play there. I used to play there every Thursday night, man. That's how I got to know those guys, because I got this gig every Thursday night through meeting Troy, and then I got to know Austin, of course, because Austin would always be around. And a couple years later, Austin, is in the music industry, and he's working on Janelle's project, and they need a guitar player, so he calls me, and I end up going. And at this time, I'm playing this like little restaurants and stuff all over the place,
Yeah,
like, no big deal. Like I was doing, and. So I mean, it was just very obvious early on, even with the raw talent and like not even really having a collection of music to play or to showcase, that there was something there, and people recognized that early on, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet Sean Kemp a few times?
Oh, a bunch of times, man. At one point, me and Sean were pretty close.
Wow. That's so rad. So rad.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Cool. All right. Well, so you said, okay, so from there, you are already doing the fun tour and all that stuff. So getting Indigo, what did they do for you then? What was it like? Did they advance you to the next level then?
That's what broke the ceiling for me, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, getting with Indigo is what broke the ceiling. I mean, this not to take away the credit from the other people I had worked with up to that point. There was decent work being done, but it wasn't the work that needed to be done. Like there was a point, let me back up and say, I've had to go through several different phases of my career. Like before I got signed, it was Ayron Jones in the Way, and Ayron Jones in the Way was this 3-piece rock outfit, kind of blues-based rock outfit. And we were playing, I mean, that was really a project that had the opportunity or a chance, I think, that if we were represented by perhaps the right person, that we could have broke the ceiling then, But I'm glad we didn't, because I don't know if the music was quite mature enough to that I would have wanted to put it out at that point. But there was other opportunities there, and this goes back to like having the right people around you, the right representation. But even with that being said, there was still a lot that got done, and we ended up working with a lot of really really big names and people. But then working with Indigood is what broke the ceiling, because Indigood was so well connected in the music industry, and it's top tier of the music industry, mainstream rock, and
Oh yeah.
and so what it took then was just my music catching up and recording the sound that I knew I wanted to sound like, and getting that in their hands so that they could shop it out and find the right people.
And where you think they were able to do that for you, like help you,
Oh,
like,
yeah, 100%.
and was that how was that done? Like, do you feel like it was through producers they selected, or like how did they kind of help you get into that
No, so all
space?
that stuff was done independently, man. So like
Oh wow.
yeah, so my music was done independently before I brought it to the label. And
Wow.
so they fell in love with the sound that we had done, like we had created on our own.
Okay.
And then they brought in some other hands to help bring some of that tone out, especially on the recording Take Me Away. They brought in some really great people to help work on that. Ted Jensen on the mastering, and then Chris Lord Algae on the mix, just to bring out the tone. But that's my sound, man. Like, that's my sound. Me and Eric Lavoie over at London Bridge. I searched for the right producer for this project, but at this time, having worked with Mix-a-Lot and Barrett Martin, and
Yeah.
having gone through all this astounding independent career, having all this experience now, I'm vetted, I'm a veteran in what I'm doing, and so now I know exactly what I wanted to sound like, and it was just a matter of getting the right tone. So I went over to London Bridge, and I sought out Eric Lavoie, who's one of the owners over at London Bridge Studios here in Seattle, and we laid down this tone that was undeniable, man. Undeniable, and we all knew it when we finished our session. We knew it, man. So, and that's what really got ears peaked all over the industry, and what got us here was that tone.
Wow. And is that what attracted the attention of what like Big Machine and stuff? Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It was that sound, man. I mean,
And how did they hear it? And like, how did they get wind of you? And tell me about signing to that label.
sure, that was through Indigood. So Indigood had the song in their hands, and my everyday manager Michael handed it off to his boss, and that's kind of what made the connection to John Varvatos. And John heard it; he was blown away. And then he flew out to Seattle to see us play.
Wow.
So we got to see us play a sold out show here in Seattle. Loved it. He came with another label rep, Julian Raymond from Big Machine, and they heard it. They saw it live, and they were astounded. They loved it, and then it was just a matter of bringing it to the rest of the label after that. So then we flew out to go do a showcase for Scott Borchetta and the rest of the executives over at the label.
Uh-huh.
Everybody loved it, and the rest is history. And now we're here.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
That show was more nerve-wracking or more exciting, like playing those showcases? Like, do you feel like, oh, if I screw up, then I might blow
No,
this?
those aren't nerve wracking at all. I don't feel that way at all. No. I feel more like that when I'm on like a big stage and there's like 20,000 people in the audience. That's when you feel that kind of pressure. But in terms of those showcases, man, at that point, I mean, by the time you're getting to the point of doing showcases, it takes a lot of showcases before you really, find the right fit. So that was the last 3 to 5 years. That was probably my fifth or sixth showcase I've had to do. So,
Oh wow. Okay, so that wasn't the first one. It wasn't your first
no,
rodeo when it came
no,
to that stuff.
no. But
Right
and
on,
also,
man.
at that point though too, that we were going to showcases. I mean, I had all this experience as a live musician that my live game was never. I mean, that has always been my bread and butter, is my live show. And to this day, I mean, what's interesting now is that the music is now matching the live show, right? So all these people are hearing me for the first time, and everyone's like they're following it, they're loving it, and it's building more momentum,
Uh-huh.
But the live show is where it's at. I think when people get wind or get a chance to really experience a live show, I think that's when everybody's gonna really turn their heads. But I'm glad the
Yeah.
music is at the point now that people are really starting to perk their ears up, though.
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool. And with this new release, you just put out "Take Me Away." That's the most recent song you put out,
Yeah,
and
Take Me Away.
is that the first single of what will be like a record or an EP?
Yeah, we're hoping to have a full length, but we haven't decided on what that's gonna look like or when just yet.
Got
But
it.
yeah, this is the first single, and hopefully we can keep trickling out some music as we're figuring out what the end result's gonna look like.
Yeah. Was that your first release with Big Machine?
Yeah,
And
that's my first major label release.
okay. And was there a reason that you chose "Take Me Away," or was that the song that you had ready and were like, okay, this is what I'm going to put out?
I just thought "Take Me Away" was a great introduction as my first mainstream release. You know, like that was
Mhm.
going to be that's a great story to tell before you open the book. You know, and so I that's what kind of why I chose that song, and there's other songs that are going to hopefully follow that are gonna open up more of the story, you know, in the chapter of the book. So, but that was like a good little first chapter. Yeah,
Very exciting. Do you feel like that's kind of going to set the tone for the rest of the record, or is it
definitely,
kind of differently? Like,
definitely. I think that song has the overarching imagery I'm going for the record and kind of the tone that's already been set, and so pieces. I feel like pieces of that song are represent different songs in the album, you know, but all in one. So the song's all encompassing. But the new stuff, yeah, I'm excited about it, and it's already looking pretty. I mean, it's only been out 5 days, and it's already gaining some momentum, man. So I'm really excited. You know, the other day something happened. I think I was sitting here tripping because they were my friend was like, "Oh, they're playing you in L.A. right now." I'm like, "Oh wow, L.A. Are you serious?" Like freaking out, you know, because like it's L.A. You know.
yeah, I mean
You
that's
know, so
awesome. Yeah, sure. I mean, do you hear your
yeah.
song on the radio in Seattle at all? Have you
Yeah, it's
heard
on
it
the radio
on?
in Seattle. Yeah, I've heard it here in Seattle. It's not, you know, in Seattle. It's still really appreciated and it's still a surprise being in the rotation. But, you know, I've been on the radio a little on and off throughout my indie career. You know, so
Yeah,
while I'm still very happy to be put in the rotation. It's not as quite as shocking as when you hear it in another state or a city somewhere else. You know, that's when you're
sure.
like, wow. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah, I feel you on that one.
yeah,
Totally.
man. Yeah.
Rad. I know you've been giving advice to aspiring artists pretty much throughout this whole thing with your knowledge on like managers and everything else. But I was wondering if you have like any advice for aspiring artists, if you can kind of like one specific thing, if you had.
Your music still really matters. Your music still really matters, and that's what I can say is if you're really dreaming big and you really want to get there, then you just need to keep focusing on what makes you sound like what you are and get it on a record. And because if you really, you know, if you're really that what you believe you are, it's just gonna stand out, you know. So just keep focusing on making good music. I know that it can be easy to lean on live music as a way of life and you can make a career out of that and doing that, and if that's your choice, then focus on that. But if you're really trying to be an international recording artist, you really got to focus on your music, man. So just focus and find your sound and be the best you can be.
Bringing it backwards.